Forget everything you thought you knew about the ancient wonders of the world. In the very heart of Siberia, in a wilderness rarely touched by humans, stands a structure that makes even the Great Wall of China pale in comparison. Imagine not just a wall, but a cyclopean structure built from granite titans, each weighing thousands of tons. These blocks, reaching 20 meters in length and 6 in height, are fitted together with a precision that seems impossible. Their faces are perfectly flat, their corners perfectly square, as if carved by some gigantic tool that left behind edges as sharp as a knife. This nameless wall rises hundreds of meters into the sky, creating a landscape that looks more like the ruins of a city of titans than a natural formation. This place is Gornaya Shoria, a harsh and inaccessible land in southern Siberia. There are no tourist routes or beaten paths here. Only icy winds, impenetrable taiga, and rocks that have kept their silence for millennia. It seems as if time itself bypasses this place, leaving it in its pristine, wild state. It is here, far from civilization, cut off from the world, that this mysterious wall stands. It guards no borders and leads nowhere. It simply exists, a silent witness to an age not written about in any history book. Its sight evokes not just surprise, but a genuine awe mixed with bewilderment. And this gives rise to the main question that splits the world of researchers into two camps. Mainstream geology offers a simple and logical explanation. We are merely looking at a unique trick of nature. Over millions of years, colossal tectonic pressure within the mountain fractured the granite along natural fault lines. Then, the relentless work of wind and water smoothed these fractures, creating the illusion of man-made masonry. Nature has created other, similar wonders capable of deceiving the human eye. But when you stand before this massive structure and see not a chaotic pile of stones, but a rhythmic, orderly pattern, this explanation is hard to believe. There's too much logic in it, too much symmetry. So what is it really? An incredible creation of blind natural forces that achieved the pinnacle of architectural art? Or is it the silent, incomprehensible legacy of a long-lost civilization whose technology and capabilities we can't even begin to imagine? To truly understand that anything is possible in these lands, you only need to look away from the wall for a moment and remember what other secrets the Siberian earth holds.
And these secrets are far from ordinary. The land of Siberia is a true archive of unexplained events where facts often sound more fantastic than any fiction. Just think of 1908, when a dazzling fireball streaked across the sky over the remote taiga near the Podkamenaya Tunguska River. A moment later, an explosion of unimaginable power followed. The sound waves circled the earth twice, and millions of trees were flattened in a fan-shaped pattern over an area of 2,000 square kilometers. The answer seemed obvious, a giant meteorite impact. But when the first scientific expeditions finally reached the epicenter decades later, they were shocked. There was no crater at the supposed impact site, no fragments, no traces of a cosmic body. More than a century has passed, but the Tunguska event remains one of the greatest scientific mysteries, giving birth to dozens of hypotheses, from the explosion of a comet's nucleus to the crash of an alien spacecraft. Or take a more recent story. In 2010, in the Denisova cave in the Altai Mountains, archaeologists discovered a tiny bone fragment, the last phalanx of a child's little finger. At first glance, it was an ordinary find, but when DNA analysis was performed, the scientific world stood still in amazement. The genetic code belonged neither to a Neanderthal nor to a Homo sapiens. It was something completely new, a separate, previously unknown branch in human evolution. This is how the world learned about the Denisovans, who lived in these lands hundreds of thousands of years ago, alongside our ancestors. This discovery proved irrefutably that human history is far more complex than we thought, and Siberia was a cradle for more than just the species we knew. And here scientific facts begin to echo ancient folklore in a surprising way. When science itself confirms the existence of another human branch in this very region, how can we dismiss the age-old legends passed down by local people for generations? Legends of a race of giants who once roamed the mountains and built immense stone cities. For a long time, these were considered nothing more than fairy tales, echoes of pagan beliefs. But after the discovery of the Denisovans, who, according to some reconstructions, were significantly larger and more powerful than the average human, these myths gained an unexpected, almost tangible basis. What if the builders of these cyclopean structures were not a figment of imagination? And so, in 2013, one Russian researcher, inspired by these mysteries and legends, decided it was time to stop guessing. He assembled a small expedition and set off into the heart of Gornaya Shoria to see with his own eyes what had only been whispered about around taiga campfires for centuries. That researcher was Georgy Sidorov. In 2013, driven less by scientific calculation and more by a thirst to touch a mystery, he led a small but determined expedition. 19 people went with him, a diverse team of scientists, experienced travelers, and enthusiasts united by a single goal: to step where modern man had rarely gone before, and to see if there was any truth behind the ancient legends. They knew perfectly well this was no leisurely stroll. Gornaya Shoria does not forgive mistakes. A true test of endurance awaited them. The journey proved even tougher than they had imagined. Every step upward was a struggle. They had to push through dense, ancient taiga, where tangled roots and fallen trees turned the ground into a continuous obstacle course. Steep, rocky ascents gave way to treacherous scree slopes, where one wrong move could lead to disaster. The icy, piercing wind never let up, draining their warmth and strength. It was a battle, not only with nature, but with themselves, with their doubts and exhaustion. They were in a true lost world, where the only sounds were the howl of the wind and their own ragged breaths. But all of it, the cold, the fatigue, and the dozens of kilometers of grueling trekking, was forgotten in an instant when they finally reached their goal and emerged onto a mountain plateau. What they saw before them didn't fit into any conventional view of the world. It was like a scene from a fantasy film about forgotten gods. A gigantic stone structure rose directly from the mountainside. This was it, the very wall from the legends, but seeing it in person surpassed even the wildest expectations. Enormous granite blocks, nearly 20 meters long and 6 meters high, were stacked on top of each other with mathematical precision. The weight of each monolith was estimated to be thousands of tons. These weren't rough boulders shaped by nature. Their surfaces were flat, and their corners were perfectly square, as if they had been cut and polished using some unknown technology. The entire structure rose to a colossal height, giving the impression of an immense fortress wall or the foundation of a city built for giants. This was not just a pile of rocks. It was a deliberate, orderly construction, screaming its artificial origin. It seemed the mystery was solved. Before them was an irrefutable proof of an ancient civilization. But the astonishing size and apparent artificiality were only the beginning, the first layer of this incredible enigma. As the researchers recovered from their initial shock and began to examine the find more closely, they encountered phenomena that defied all logical explanation and made them question the very reality of what they were seeing. As the expedition members examined the megaliths, their familiar picture of the world began to crumble. The first strange sign came from their navigation instruments. The compass needle, the most reliable guide for any traveler in the wild, suddenly began to behave erratically. Instead of pointing steadily north, it trembled, deviated, and finally began to spin chaotically as if it had gone mad. This wasn't happening in just one spot, but across the entire area around the giant masonry. It was as if a powerful magnet was encased within these 1,000-ton granite blocks, creating a strong, invisible field that disrupted all their equipment. Was this a natural property of the rock itself? Or was the source of the anomaly artificial, deliberately placed in the heart of this structure? There were no answers, but the feeling of touching something beyond comprehension only grew stronger. It didn't stop there. A closer look at the surface of some blocks revealed an even more shocking detail. The granite, one of the hardest and most heat-resistant rocks on the planet, showed clear signs of melting. This didn't look like normal erosion from wind or water. The stone looked as if it had been subjected to an unimaginable temperature and had flowed like thick caramel, then cooled into bizarre molten waves. A glassy crust had formed on the surface, typical of rock that has undergone extreme heating. The melting point of granite is over 1,200 degrees Celsius. What force could generate such heat in the middle of the Siberian taiga, a place where even starting a simple campfire is a challenge? This didn't look like the aftermath of a forest fire or a lightning strike. The scale of the melting was too vast. It was as if some colossal energy source had been deliberately aimed at the wall, turning the hardest stone into a viscous mass. Against the backdrop of these anomalies, the question of sheer scale became even more pressing. To truly grasp what the researchers were facing, a comparison is needed. The greatest wonder of ancient engineering is often said to be the Baalbek Terrace in Lebanon, where the foundation of a temple contains the so-called Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a monolith weighing over 1,000 tons. Even today, scientists cannot agree on how ancient people managed to quarry and move it. Another example is the Great Pyramid of Giza, where the largest blocks weigh around 80 tons. For centuries, these structures were considered the absolute limit of human capability. But what lies in Gorna Shoria simply doesn't fit on this scale. The megaliths here are estimated to weigh 3 or even 4,000 tons each. That's 3 to 4 times heavier than the most massive block at Baalbek. Imagine a granite block the size of a small apartment building, carved from a single piece of rock, lifted to a great height, and placed neatly into a wall. No modern mobile crane can lift such a weight, let alone transport it to an impassable mountainous region. So what do we have? An unexplained magnetic field, traces of incredible temperatures, and building blocks of a size and weight that neither ancient nor modern technology could move. If nature, as we know it, couldn't have created this, and if humans couldn't have built it with any conceivable technique, then who was the author of this creation? This is where facts and observations end, and we enter the realm of the most daring, incredible, and truly fantastic hypotheses. When logic and the known laws of physics fall short, the human imagination steps in, trying to fill the void with the most incredible ideas. Faced with the silent and grandiose Siberian megaliths, 3 main theories have emerged, each attempting to explain the impossible in its own way. They go far beyond traditional science, finding their roots in myths, speculations about lost history, and even the cosmos. The first theory appeals to the simplest, most primal logic. If the structures are gigantic, perhaps they were built by giants. This idea isn't new. It exists in the folklore of almost every culture in the world. But here, in Siberia, it finds fertile ground. For centuries, local people passed down legends of a mighty race of giants who lived in these mountains in time immemorial, effortlessly moving massive stone blocks to build their cyclopean cities. For a long time, this was just a beautiful fairy tale. But the scientific discovery of the Denisovans forced a re-evaluation of these legends. If a separate, powerful branch of humanity really did live here, a branch that, according to some data, surpassed us in height and strength, could they have possessed the physical ability for such construction? This theory suggests the Shoria Wall is not just stone, but a tangible legacy, the last surviving artifact of a world where real giants walked the earth. Skeptics, of course, will argue that there is no direct proof of giant humans, but the temptation to connect a scientific fact with an ancient legend is too strong to ignore. The second theory shifts the focus from physical strength to technological prowess. What if the builders weren't giants, but possessed knowledge we have long since lost? Proponents of this hypothesis, like researcher Graham Hancock and his followers, suggest the existence of a highly advanced global Golden Age civilization in the distant past. This civilization reached incredible heights in engineering, astronomy, and perhaps even in controlling fundamental forces of nature, like gravity or acoustic levitation. They erected megalithic structures all over the planet, and the wall in Shoria is just one of them. But around 12,800 years ago, a global cataclysm occurred, perhaps a comet impact or a sudden shift of the Earth's crust, which wiped this civilization from the face of the Earth, plunging the survivors into a dark age. All that remains of their former greatness are these silent stone witnesses, which we today can neither replicate nor even fully comprehend. Critics of this version point to the complete absence of smaller artifacts, no writings, no tools, no pottery. But its defenders counter. After a cataclysm of that magnitude, only the most colossal structures could have survived. Finally, the third theory is the most fantastic, taking us beyond our planet. When it seems that no earthly force, neither biological nor technological, can explain what has been seen, only one option remains: extraterrestrial intervention. For supporters of this version, the incredible precision of the granite work, the colossal weight of the blocks, and the anomalous traces of melting can only be explained by the use of non-human technology. Perhaps in the distant past, Siberia was a base or a construction site for an alien civilization. They could have cut and moved these multi-ton blocks with ease, using energy weapons or anti-gravity devices that left behind both the molten traces and the strange magnetic fields. Some enthusiasts even see engravings on the stones resembling spacecraft. Although this hypothesis remains the most controversial, it is the only one that offers a simple explanation for all the mysteries of the wall. These three theories of giants, a lost civilization, and aliens stir the imagination and reflect our deep-seated desire to believe in miracles. They turn cold stones into a portal to other worlds and eras. But while enthusiasts and dreamers build their incredible theories, mainstream science has its own, much more down-to-earth, yet no less interesting perspective on this mystery. Geologists have an explanation ready that requires no giants or lost technologies. But can it truly answer all the questions that have been raised? Against the backdrop of these mind-bending hypotheses, the voice of mainstream science sounds far more prosaic and cold. Geologists who have studied the photographs and expedition reports offer an explanation devoid of any mysticism. From their point of view, what we are seeing is not a wall, not the ruins of an ancient city, and not the legacy of aliens, but a grandiose yet entirely natural geological formation known as spheroidal weathering or megalithic jointing. This complex name describes a surprisingly simple and elegant natural process that has unfolded over millions of years. It all began deep underground as molten magma slowly cooled to form a massive granite plate. Even at this early stage, internal stresses built up within the rock. Then, over unimaginable eons, tectonic forces came into play. The colossal pressure of the Earth's crust, which squeezes and moves continents, literally fractured this granite massif like a giant press. But granite is a crystalline rock, and it doesn't crack randomly. The fractures followed natural lines of least resistance, forming a vast network of nearly perpendicular vertical and horizontal cracks. The mountain was essentially pre-scored into giant rectangular blocks. After that, for millions of years, erosion and weathering did their relentless work. Water seeped into the cracks, froze and expanded, chipping away pieces of rock. Wind, like a sandblaster, smoothed the surfaces. As a result of this slow but inevitable process, the weaker sections of rock were destroyed and carried away, while the strongest and most massive blocks remained, becoming exposed and creating the startling illusion of man-made masonry. Nature is the greatest sculptor, and it is capable of wonders that can easily be mistaken for man-made creations. One need only think of the famous Giant's Causeway in Ireland, or the basalt columns in Iceland. Thousands of perfect hexagonal pillars standing close together like the pipes of a giant organ. All of this is the result of cooling lava, not the work of mythical giants. According to scientists, the wall in Siberia is just another exhibit, albeit an incredibly massive one, in this amazing natural museum. But, as is often the case with great mysteries, the simple and logical explanation, though convincing, leaves behind unsettling, inconvenient questions. The geological theory perfectly explains the shape and structure, but it stumbles over details that don't fit into the neat picture of slow erosion. Take, for example, the almost perfect rectangular opening at the base of one of the formations. It looks too neat, too symmetrical to be a random trick of nature. Could weathering have created such a perfect doorway? Theoretically, yes, but the probability is extremely low. And the most powerful argument that shatters cold rationalism is the evidence of melting. Geology offers no explanation for why granite, which requires a temperature of over 1200 degrees to melt, looks in some places as if it flowed like wax. Neither the slow processes of erosion nor tectonic pressure can generate such heat. A lightning strike? It would have left only a small localized mark, not melted massive sections of multi-ton blocks. Here, the scientific theory falls silent, unable to offer a coherent answer. Science can explain most of the Siberia phenomenon, but not all of it. And it is in these cracks of logic, in these gaps of scientific knowledge, that the mysteries and legends continue to live, refusing to yield to dry facts. The Siberia Wall is a point where two worlds collide, the world of facts and the world of imagination. And so we are left alone with this great Siberian mystery, where every argument is met with a counter-argument. So what is it? On one side of the scale, we have the cold, measured voice of science. It tells us of millions of years of tectonic pressure and erosion, of natural fault lines in crystalline rock, and of nature's ability to create perfect illusions. This version is logical, well-founded, and supported by numerous examples from other parts of the world. It doesn't ask us to believe in the impossible, but rather invites us to admire the untamed power and artistic talent of the Earth itself. This is the world of facts, where there is no room for ancient civilizations or aliens. But on the other side of the scale lie the details that this neat theory sidesteps. The unexplained magnetic anomalies that confuse compasses, the perfectly straight openings that look as though they were cut into the rock with a purpose, and most importantly, the traces of colossal temperatures that melted the hardest granite. These facts are stubborn. They do not fit into the picture of a slow and cold geological process. They hint at some powerful, perhaps instantaneous and intelligent intervention. And here the world of myth is born, a world of speculation where legends of giants come to life and bold hypotheses about forgotten technologies emerge. The Gornja Shoria Wall exists in this liminal state, simultaneously a geological wonder, an unexplained anomaly, and a myth embodied in stone.
The truth, perhaps, remains undiscovered for one simple reason. The main guardian of this secret is the place itself. The wall is located in one of the most remote regions of Siberia. To conduct a full-scale scientific investigation there would require organizing a complex and expensive expedition, transporting heavy equipment, ground-penetrating radar, drilling rigs, spectrometers into the impassable taiga. Mainstream science is extremely reluctant to allocate funding to verify what it initially considers myths about giants or an internet sensation. Therefore, for now, the structure remains in limbo. Thanks to the photographs of independent researchers like Georgy Sidorov, the world has learned of its existence. But these pictures are merely a tantalizing peek through a keyhole. Without serious, comprehensive work by scientists on site, all debates will remain at the level of speculation. And the wall continues to wait, standing silent and patient in the Siberian wilderness, guarding its secrets from our curious, but for now powerless gaze. Perhaps it is just granite, bizarrely shaped by time and the elements, and all the anomalies are mere coincidences that our imagination strives to piece together into a single narrative. Or perhaps we are truly looking at the last surviving trace of something so ancient that humanity has long and hopelessly forgotten it. Until the truth is revealed, this giant stone wall serves as a timeless and silent reminder that there are still mysteries on our planet that are far older than recorded history itself.